This training has been designed by Cambridgeshire Virtual School to support governors with specific responsibility for children in care and children previously in care. However, it should also be a really useful resource for all members of governing bodies. Who was identified within the statutory guidance for looked after children and previously looked after children 2018 should have regard. The information that we provide throughout the training does make direct reference to the statutory guidance, and we really encourage governors to familiarise themselves with the guidance that is available online through the DfE website. Of this brief training are to support governors to understand the statutory roles and responsibilities of both the designated teacher and governing bodies for care experienced children, and to support governors to develop an understanding of what makes these groups particularly vulnerable. So who is a child in care? The law and the Department for Education use the term looked after children. However, our children within Cambridgeshire prefer the term child in care or child previously in care because this puts the child first. So for the purposes of this training, we're going to be using those terms. As identified within this slide, a child in care is a young person who is looked after by their local authority under either a court order or through a voluntary arrangement made with the child's parents. They may be living with foster carers, friends, relatives, within a residential care home, residential school, secure unit, or in a semi-independent living arrangement. In some circumstances, a child in care could be living with birth parents under a care order. A child who is previously in care is a child who was looked after but ceased to be looked after because of either a child arrangement order, a special guardianship order, or an adoption order. It's really important to note that if a child or young person returns to their birth family after a period of being in care, they do not come under the definition of children previously in care. There are a variety of reasons why a young person might come into the care system or experience the care system. The primary reason for children entering care, both nationally and within Cambridgeshire, is abuse or neglect, and this accounts for typically 65% of cases. We also have over 100 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and they typically make up to a fifth of our total cohort of children in care. It's really important to understand the challenges faced and encountered by these cohorts. It's really important that we learn from the lived experience of our children and young people, so we can ensure the appropriate support is offered by education settings, which enable our children's needs to be met and provide them with the best opportunity to thrive through their childhood and into their adult lives. Over half of children in care have identified SEND needs, with almost a quarter having an education healthcare plan. The primary area of need for these young people is social, emotional and mental health. It is essential that schools have fully considered the individual needs of these learners and have appropriate plans in place that nurture learners and enable progress towards agreed and regularly reviewed outcomes. Expectation of all students, though, regardless of their starting point or SEND needs, should remain aspirational and linked to young persons' abilities and interests. It is highly likely that the early experiences leading to a child being care experienced are likely to lead to developmental and relational trauma. This occurs when there is disruption to the original pathway towards safety and connection. This type of trauma can impact on neurological development and therefore needs to be understood by schools. The statutory guidance for designated teachers explicitly states that one of their roles is to understand the impact trauma and attachment disorder and other mental health issues could have on children in care and children previously in care, and their ability to engage with learning. It does go on to state that designated teachers and other school staff must recognise that issues will continue to affect children previously in care and children in care, and that school will need to continue to respond appropriately to their needs. For reference, being attachment aware in this context means ensuring that the school understands attachment theory and the impact of attachment disorders on a child's emotional development and learning, and that therefore whole school approaches must support those pupils with attachment difficulties. For anyone interested in learning any more about this, we would absolutely recommend any of the books by Louise Bomber, but especially Know Me to Teach Me. What is important is that school leaders are ensuring policy and practice is inclusive and taking into account the individual needs and characteristics of these cohorts. All school staff need to understand how previous experiences and events are likely to impact on children's behaviour today, regardless of how long or when they experience the care system. School staff need to be able to adapt their approach to behaviour. National and local data evidences that a disproportionate number of care experienced children are suspended from school, most frequently for behaviour which schools consider disruptive and or defiant. And research continues to evidence that suspensions not only disrupt the learning process, they also disrupt and increase a young people's vulnerability and can impact negatively on a young person's mental health, leading to further stigmatisation of our young people. It's therefore so important that schools are able to strongly evidence to governors all they are doing and have done to drive down suspensions for these cohorts. There are additional factors, and so many, that care experienced children have to navigate, including placement moves, moving from home to home, the court process. Children in care are often left uncertain and anxious about what will happen to them next. Will they return to their parents? Will they be moved tomorrow, next week, next month, next year? Where will they be for their birthday, Christmas? It can take a really long time for local authorities to gain a full care order, and this can cause high levels of anxiety for our children. Some of our children are separated from siblings, and unfortunately, they can be separated across counties or different parts of the country, and younger children may also be adopted. Children in care are likely to be worried about their birth families, where they are, when they're going to see them next. How will it be when they see them? There are ongoing changes for some young people of social worker, and this can left them feeling unsupported and a lack of consistency. And school moves. The virtual school try hard to advocate against school moves, as a school is often a place of stability for our children in care, particularly at the point of coming into care. However, sometimes there are unavoidable situations, but this can lead to another major change for our children. Improvements in the outcomes of care experienced children and children from other vulnerable groups have remained stubborn. There's still a significant gap between children in care, children previously in care, and their non-care experienced peers. These gaps are evident at all key stages and in all externally sat examinations, and are evident in the table below. The table below shows our Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 4 data for this year's cohort. You can see that very few of our young people achieve the expected standard, both in reading, writing and maths at Key Stage 2 and in English and maths at Grade 4+ and Grade 5+. Unfortunately, this deeply hinders the opportunities available to our young people as they transition into post-16 learning. We know that data shows us that education can be a protective factor for children in care and previously in care. Too often, though, that academic results prevent them from successfully transitioning to adulthood, leaving them with very limited qualifications and experiences, and therefore hindering their future opportunities. It's so important, then, that designated teachers, supported by school staff and senior leaders, consider the individual needs of each and every child in care and previously in care to enable them to achieve and thrive. Key performance indicators for these cohorts and individuals, including behaviour data, attendance data, and engagement data, should all be closely tracked and monitored so that actions can be taken to address any issues that are identified as early as possible. It's really important that as governors you remain curious about learner outcomes and are supporting and challenging school leaders around this through governor meetings and visits. In addition to the attainment and progress outcomes of care experienced children, there are also a variety of additional factors that care experienced children have to navigate, and these can significantly impact on outcomes of this cohort as they progress into adulthood. The statistics for care experienced adults remain stark, and this data continues to evidence that they are likely to have lower life expectancy and poorer health outcomes. Care experienced adults are disproportionately represented in the prison population, and unemployment rates for care leavers are notably higher compared to their peers. There is no doubt that there is a correlation between these adults and the limited academic results and qualifications they leave the education system with. Therefore, it's really important that schools are actively considering how they can support care experienced children to achieve the very best qualifications possible, enabling them to progress into employment when they move into adulthood. To support the levelling up of outcomes for these cohorts of children and young people, Pupil Premium Plus is available, and this is different to Pupil Premium. For children in care, the money goes directly to the virtual school, and it's the virtual school's responsibility to distribute this money to best impact outcomes for this cohort. The virtual school has an annual statutory duty to report on the spending of the money. Within Cambridgeshire, designated teachers are expected to utilise children's personal education plans to identify where Pupil Premium Plus is required to enable improved academic progress of individuals. For children previously in care, Pupil Premium Plus money is sent directly to the school. To access Pupil Premium Plus money for this cohort, the young person must be identified as a child previously in care through the October census. It is strongly encouraged that schools send a letter out both at the point of admission and at the beginning of the academic year to ensure that parents and carers understand the value and how to identify if their child is eligible for PP+. The designated teacher is a staff member whose role it is to promote the educational achievement of both children in care and children previously in care. Even where schools don't have a young person from these cohorts on their roll, schools are expected to have a named and trained designated teacher in recognition that a child from these cohorts could come on roll at any point. Even though aspects of the role can be delegated, for example, administration tasks, the role itself can only be taken on by a qualified teacher, and this is stated clearly in the 2018 statutory guidance. The designated teacher should be a person who has appropriate seniority across the setting and is able to impact and influence change for these cohorts. Whilst the designated teacher does have overall responsibility, it's really important to add that statutory guidance does explicitly mention the importance of all key stakeholders, and that includes you yourselves as governors, as part of governing bodies, in supporting and enabling improved outcomes for these cohorts. So, what are the key roles then of the designated teacher? Well, they must act as an advocate for children in care and children previously in care, ensuring that school policy and practice has these cohorts threaded throughout. Each child in care must have a personal education plan completed termly, and this plan brings the child together with their key professionals to agree clear academic targets that support accelerated progress, showing regard for the young person's aspirations and ambitions. And it's within these meetings that Pupil Premium Plus can be requested to the virtual school. Whilst it is not statutory for children previously in care to have a personal education plan, it is strongly recommended as best practice. DTs are also responsible for ensuring that all school staff understand the barriers faced by these cohorts and how they should be supported to overcome these. DTs must continue to promote a strong expectation amongst staff for this cohort, recognising that with the right nurture, cohorts can achieve alongside their peers and should be supported too. As mentioned, the young person's voice should be central to their personal education plan, but additionally, school settings and education settings should show regard for this cohort, ensuring that there are opportunities for their voice to be heard and opportunities for them to inform school developments. Of course, DTs must ensure that the needs of these young people are absolutely prioritised. It's expected that designated teachers have robust processes for tracking these cohorts and ensuring that the team of key professionals and staff working with the children are aware of their progress and their roles in supporting the young people to achieve within their settings. Best practice would be that designated teachers are reporting back to governors at least annually on the progress of these cohorts. As identified within the statutory guidance, governors must check that the designated teacher has received appropriate training and that this is up to date. Designated teachers can access information regarding training opportunities through their local authority virtual school. Governors must ensure that there are annual opportunities for them to meet with the designated teacher and ensure that school leadership teams are aware of these cohorts, monitoring their progress carefully and responding actively to any identified needs. They must ensure that where the designated teacher is not within the leadership team, that they have opportunities to feed in appropriately to whole school development plans. They must ensure that the school policy and practice is inclusive and sensitive to the needs of these cohorts, and ensure that schools are supporting young people with any additional needs which may have been identified. These could include mental health and wellbeing issues. Each local authority has a virtual school. The virtual school oversees educational achievement for all children in care within their local authority, alongside providing advice and guidance for children previously in care and children living in kinship. All Cambridgeshire settings can access support, advice, guidance and information from the virtual school. Where a school has a child in care on its roll, There will be an attached education advisor from the virtual school who will meet termly with the designated teacher. But it's important to add that the school can contact the virtual school for advice and guidance at any point in the academic year. At least annually. Many schools do align this with their safeguarding governor visits. It's really important that governors do carefully consider the topics that should be discussed and the key questions that could be posed during these visits to make sure that schools and designated teachers are being appropriately supported and challenged to meet their statutory obligations. This will help ensure that both children in care and children previously in care are being supported to achieve the very best outcomes. The virtual school recommends all questions centre around these 5 main areas: progress and attainment, inclusion, learner's voice, attendance and funding. One question could be, how are outcomes for children in care and children previously in care actually monitored? And how do these compare to their non-care experienced peers? Around inclusion, how do we make sure that children previously in care and children in care can access the same opportunities as other pupils within the setting? With regard to learner's voice, we've already mentioned through this training that learner's voice should be underpinning their personal education plans. But beyond this, have children previously in care and children in care been given the opportunity to share their views and be listened to? And actually, what was the outcome of this, where they were given this opportunity? With regards to attendance, are the school able to identify how the attendance of children in care and children previously in compare to all other pupils? And funding. How much pupil premium plus funding do we get for each child in care or previously in care? How is this money being spent? What difference has this money made? And how do we actually know that it's having the desired impact? In addition to the questions posed here, there is also a useful guide that you'll be able to download, which should provide you with additional questions that should support your visits. As governors, at Cambridgeshire Virtual School, we recognise that you play an integral role in supporting us in fulfilling our vision of all children and young people known to social care to have the opportunities, experience and support that enables them to learn, aspire, thrive and achieve their maximum potential. We hope you found this training useful in supporting you to understand your role in enabling the correct support and challenge for education settings, enabling improved outcomes for these cohorts. Should you require any further information, you can email us virtualschool@cambridgeshire.gov.uk or visit our website through camslearntogether.co.uk.